All right. So welcome so much. An event I was on yesterday, a meeting I was on yesterday. They started with an amazing, like Lucille Clifton, her amazing poem, "Come Celebrate with Me," which begins, "Come celebrate with me, for every day there has been something that has tried to kill me and has failed." When you think about 2020 and the confluence of different forces that we are facing, I think no poem is more apt to describe um, what's happening today. So I'm gonna keep an eye on the mutes and try
Mhm.
to keep everyone together. All right. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Our idea is that we want to do like a power hour session and get out of here like around 7. And if we do have an extended Q&A, maybe the folks who have capacity to do that will be able to stay on and kind of keep this thing going. But we really want to keep this into a power hour. So with that being said, I want to introduce and kind of bring on um, our amazing editorial director. I am so happy and grateful to be working with them on this project. Happy that they said yes to this experiment, this idea, um, and just how its evolution that it will happen over time. So I am really grateful to have Philly native writer Fajr Muhammad as our editorial director for this project.
Oh,
So
thank you so much. As if yes was even like an option. So welcome everybody. Thank you guys for joining us. Like Chris mentioned, on this Thursday. My name is Faja Muhammad. I'm a Philadelphia native, born and raised, Kutztown alum. Hey, Nael. And a Columbia MFA graduate. I've been a writer for most of my life, and I'm currently working on a novel about Black liberation and Black womanhood that's actually set in Philadelphia in the 1980s. Um, I guess like a quick note about me and just like the kind of introduction, my introduction to the project. When I moved back to Philadelphia from New York in 2018, I've been back about 3 years. After grad school, I quickly kind of like jumped back into the Philadelphia literary scene and got in touch with Blue Stoop, and just very quickly found a home there. Took a couple of classes, got in touch with the founders, Emma, and then joined the board, and have been working very closely with them to help bring literary events to Philly. So it was through Emma that I was introduced to Chris and kind of introduced to this project around how could we potentially kind of congregate and aggregate the stories from this past summer and this past year. So as soon as like the email came through, I was very much like, this is something that I need to be a part of. This is something that needs to be done, and it's an important project. And as the editorial director, I'll be working very closely with Chris and of course like Nael and our entire team to be able to pull the stories that we get from Philadelphians, from Black Philadelphians about how this particular year and how this summer has impacted you guys based on everything that we've seen and everything that we've experienced. So I'm very happy to be a part of it.
yes, thank you, Faja. And myself, I've been volunteering at the Paul Robeson House and Museum since about 2015. It was right in the wake of our original founder, Francis Alston's passing. I had I was moved from Chester, Pennsylvania, into Philadelphia, and was thinking about the role of like preserving our historical landmarks and our like on our cultural institutions here in Philadelphia. And I met Miss Renoka Michael at an event at the Paul Robeson House and Museum, and thinking of like what we could do to really carry on Fran's legacy, and the work of celebrating the legacy of Paul Robeson, also bringing in the story of Eslanda Robeson. I don't know if Miss Denise is on the call yet, but she's our champion for bringing Essie Robeson into the house as well. And yeah, I've been at it ever since and have been dubbed the program director in about 2017, and have cherished the number of events and programs we were able to put together at the Paul Robeson House and Museum. Additionally, I am a PhD student at Penn GSC, University of Pennsylvania, where I study literacy, um, and working towards my dissertation. At this point, just finished up coursework and headed towards my dissertation, which will be about West Philadelphia. Oh, I said thank you for the claps. I
Yeah.
saw that. Um, headed towards a project about literacy and community and place. So that's really fun, and also work with the Philadelphia Student Union and youth organizing. And their office is set at 52nd and Larchwood. So a lot of West Philadelphia organizations and spaces I'm connected to. Um, yeah. So if we move from our introductions into a bit about how this project came into being. Um, so I first would like at the Robeson House 2020, yes, has been a very tumultuous year in our communities. And the Robeson House started 2020 by paying off the mortgage, the 25-year mortgage since 1994 mortgage on 4951 and 49 Walnut Streets, which is our home base. So after decades of organizing and fundraising, we were able to pay off the house. And that's how we started 2020 in January. We had a huge celebration. And this year was all about building on that momentum. And of course, as many other cultural institutions and families have had to navigate, is the challenges of what it means to be a institution in this pandemic and be able to get the resources that we need to survive. Um, but even in that, there's been some miracles along the way. I want to say in June, right after Juneteenth, we partnered with the Colored Girls Museum out of Germantown. Um, it was like literally the weekend of Juneteenth that we planned this to have a fundraiser where we could think about as small Black arts organizations. We were unsure of like the resource that we would get the resources that we need to reopen safely when that time came. So we did a GoFundMe to kind of get started on what our needs would be. And lo and behold, the community really came and took care of us. And we reached way beyond our initial goal to our stretch goal of raising $100,000 to split between our organizations in 12 days. It was just an amazing miracle. Then after that, we were finally announced as winners of a 2020 African American Cultural Heritage Action Award, which is a national program, highly competitive, which supports the preservation of Black historical monuments all throughout the United States. So with those two initiatives, we were just sort of like thrilled. And at that time, Emma Eisenberg from Blue Stoop sent me an email about this Independence Public Media Foundation Community Voices Project. And it was a fund that was looking to fund community media about like in the midst of 2020. And I sort of just like replied back to Emma with like, well, if we were to do anything, we would probably want to document, in particular, West Philadelphia and the 52nd Street corridor in the time of the George Floyd uprising was a huge epicenter of resistance, of police violence as well. And it was just like we want to be able to help share that story from the people who were there and who have not only were there in resistance, but are like plotting, activating, organizing towards a vision of how the world must change. And I think that initial email that we shared sort of was just like, yes, we got to do it. Then it was like, well, I'm not a writer myself. We need to find the right person to do this. And Emma and myself, we were thinking of different Philadelphia writers, and Faja Muhammad came to mind. And then so that was like the huge test of like, if Faja can come on and really expand on the work that we have here, then this project has legs. And we had an initial Zoom with Faja, and it was like amazing. She loved it. And then from there, the project just grew and grew and grew. Another partner that came into the conversation was Making Worlds Bookstore. well, Making World's bookstore has a relationship with Common Notions, which is a radical publishing house. I know them best for reprinting Mia Abu Jamal's autobiography. So Malav and Nikki over at Common Notions, they heard that we were interested in this sort of publication project, and they said, "How can we support? How can we be there? How can we continue to like build on this energy?" And that's how we went from sort of a more grassroots zine idea into let's think about this as a book project, something that can emerge out of Philadelphia, but really travel all across the world. So that's a bit of the story and how the partners and the pieces come together. I definitely want to give another shout out to Making World's bookstore, which is located at 45th and Locust. They have a great campaign right now. If you look up the bookstore in terms of support for independent bookstores in this holiday season, definitely check them out. I don't know, Faja, did you want to add anything to like the picture of how this thing got started?
Yeah, I guess the thing that like popped in my mind too was just like thinking like time wise. I think like nobody, or at least I was not thinking about like how could we document these stories. Like there was so much happening around George Floyd in Minneapolis, and then just everything that erupted across the nation, and then specifically in Philadelphia. And right before we hopped on here, I was telling you, like, just because so much has happened this year, it even slipped my mind that, like, right when the protests were kind of erupting in City Hall, I'd taken my niece and my nephews down to kind of be in the moment and kind of understand what was happening around them. So in that moment, with everything happening on social media, just like all the messages being disseminated, everybody kind of coming to the aid of all of the protesters, everybody supporting the protesters and supporting kind of like the dissemination of information and all those things. It had never dawned on me that we would need to document this stuff, and we would need to have kind of a living archive. So like once Chris kind of came on, we were like, what is this thing exactly? We're not sure, but we know that this is something that needs to exist, right? There's such an ephemerality to social media, and those things kind of go away. But how can we record the stories of what actually happened in our communities for people to use kind of going forward?
Yes. And I still think that we are sitting, and we say this every time that we meet, that we are still sitting with the questions and the vision of this project. And one of the things that we find really exciting to do is to bring more people and more voices, more perspectives into this conversation to kind of figure out, you know, we're kind of building the plane as we fly it, so to speak. So there's a lot of different voices, and that part of our work is trying to bring those relationships and those many different pieces of work to the table. So I'll move from the genesis of the project into a bit of like what has been our grounding in terms of like the narratives of the project that we are looking to embrace. And feel free at any time to like use the chat to, you know, give us feedback, say, oh, can you talk about this a bit more? You know, so, and introduce yourselves too, definitely. Because I see a lot of great people on the call who probably need to meet each other. Yes. So the narratives of the project, and I'm gonna take one and then I'm gonna pass one to you, Faja. So I think the first one is an intergenerational threading of Black activist labor, demands, and freedom dreams. And what we meant by that we know when we went into this project, it was not, I mean, so much in the mainstream media tries to just collapse that the actors that are out there in this moment are simply the youth or simply Black millennials. But in Philadelphia, we know that it has never just been simply any one generation, but it has stretched across multiple generations. So when I go yesterday or to pick up Mumia Abu Jamal's latest book release, and I'm there to see people continue lifting up the organizing to free Mumia Abu Jamal, I'm seeing different generations there. And they're speaking to the long history of Black resistance in Philadelphia. So that we knew that in any way to sort of document the stories that are happening now means that we must think about this project in an intergenerational way. We want to hear from young people. We want to hear from our elders. We want to, hear from, middle-aged folks. And additionally, the sort of in thinking of activist labor and resistance in many different ways. So it's not just like, obviously the work to defund and abolish the police is directly important, and folks who are engaging in direct action around that is incredibly important. But also we're thinking around like the care work. There's been multiple mutual aid projects that have popped up in Philadelphia over this year, or have extended themselves into this year and have done amazing work. There's been demands around police-free schools. There's been demands just around educational transformation in general. And it's all sort of tied together into a vision of a new world. So when we talk about an intergenerational threading of Black activist labor, demands, and freedom dreams, it's about pulling a lot of those pieces together. I'll pass it to you, Faja.
Yes, and definitely to build off of that, we're also thinking and looking at it from the lens of intersectionality, and trying to make sure that all of the communities and all of the nuance within the Black community in Philadelphia are represented throughout the course of this book, throughout the course of this project, I should say. So we're really looking at it from an intersectional lens of age, ability, gender, class, to be able to incorporate all of the varying degrees of struggle, and how those different intersections come and meet this particular moment. So kind of to Chris's point, we're looking to incorporate, experiences from sex workers throughout the community and how they've been impacted and affected by this moment. We're looking to see, the elderly community who've organized mutual aid for their community, church folks, young people, old people, and even from just kind of a social intersection, we're also looking at it from an artistic intersection as well. So we really want to make sure that we're incorporating pieces across genre, across form, across voice and tone. So I think one of the earlier things that really excited me about this particular piece, this project, was we wanted things that were on the wide, either end of the spectrum, from academic work to Twitter threads. Like if there was something that you were able to curate and create that really kind of captures your experience in that of this particular moment, we want those voices included.
Yes, yes. Thank you. And this next one, a Philly poetics that reminds us that place is important and grounds us within relationships. I want to say it was earlier this year, it might have been around February, that we lost a giant in our community, someone I've looked up to for as long as I've been in Philadelphia, and that's James A. Spady, who's I know him for his trilogy of hip hop books and interviews. I sort of first met James Spady on the page reading Scoop newspaper, Scoop USA newspaper, and it had to be like 2015, and Dr. Spady had pulled out an interview, a classic interview that he had with Big Pun, who rest in peace, and he was telling like the story of like how Big Pun came into being, but then when I got into like his actual his story, the books that he helped sort of write over the years, I really appreciated how deep he was into understanding the ways that Philly as a place, I would say North Philly in general, for him in particular, was a way, like a whole ontology, a whole way of seeing the world. So I think that in this project, we are not shying away. We want Philly pieces. We want people who like telling Philly stories about places that people maybe outside of Philly might need to do some research in Google as they read through the pieces. It's important that we ground the work and be specific to our neighborhoods, be specific to the institutions and places which ground us, right? Shakira King, a friend of mine, is so in the midst of when 52nd Street goes sort of like up, and there's looting happening up and down the street. Shakira is standing in front of Hakeem's bookstore, and it's saying, I want to be here and protect this space. And we know Hakeem's bookstore and Yvonne Blake and Chris and Miss Glenda who are over there. It's one of the oldest Black bookstores in the country, They used the moniker the oldest Black bookstore on the East Coast, to be sure. And the fact that folks came together to make sure that place was protected is also just a great story, right? That we are thinking about, and really speaks to like a history of being grounded in Philadelphia. So Philly poetics is really important to this project. And I'll pass the other one to you.
Sure. So I think one of the challenging things about a project like this is we know that while this is a moment, we know that this is also indicative of many, many moments. And, unfortunately, moments to come. So for us, we're also thinking about how can we position this particular project and these stories and these experiences and these pieces within like a larger framework of liberation. One of the things that Chris mentioned very early on that was just like kind of eye-opening about this a project like this is how can we use these stories, these experiences to then teach and use it as a tool of education, political education. So if somebody is interested and doesn't necessarily know how they can get involved, what organizing looks like, what movement looks like, what radical resistance look like, here are, a multitude of different ways in which a person can kind of enter on the ground. Um, I think one of the other things too that kind of came to mind too is as much as we're talking about this kind of forward action, this forward movement in, we're also thinking about joy too. Like what does that look like? What does happiness look like in this moment? What has it looked like throughout this entire moment? And how does this moment connect to a larger struggle?
Yes. So that's a bit of like the questions and the narratives, and it's all unfolding and continue to evolve. But that has been some of our grounding in the conversation that we had about what we're looking to do about this project. Let me go on to the next slide. So, in terms of our ambitious output strategy, uh, we sort of have three interconnected platforms for this project. As I mentioned before, we are in negotiations with Common Notions Publishing House for as to think about this book as a book project. Um, and we realized that in order to get a book into the stores and the place that you want to get into, it takes a while. So there's a book project that we're happening. We're going through this editorial process, but that process is like you finally get the manuscript you want, and then you got to wait like a whole 9 to 12 months before it actually comes out into stores. So there's like a lot of work headed into the book project, and we create an anthology of a lot of the contributions and commissions that we'll be doing as part of this. But we also wanted to think about how can we make sure that we're using this time in the midst to be able to kind of continue this conversation, continue this archival process, and build on those things. So that's where we get into like the project website. And Faja, anytime if you want to add to one of these pieces, just go ahead and step in. So the project website, and we're happy to be working. Well, you got to see like a preview. It's like a steady page right now. We'll probably use the same platform, but we're going to be reinventing the page after we get content in to think about how we can use the cargo site. And we'll probably buy a domain at that point too, as an interactive multimedia website that really captures the spirit of the project. So how can we think about some of the writing that we're able to collect? How can we think about some of the multimedia we're able to correct? Or all the other alternative and creative formats that we can come up with that might not make sense in a book, but make sense on the sort of like screen or the internet, to think about how we can, tell the story of this moment. And additionally, oh yeah, go ahead.
So I was just going to add to that the idea too, just knowing that this is kind of grant funded by the Independence Media Fund, we were also thinking about how could, in the spirit of community, how could we kind of extend this idea of funding these stories and making sure that these stories, because we understand their worth and their value, that we are also compensating our contributors. Compensating our contributors and making sure that we're getting enough of a wide diversity of voices, a wide variety of voices. So that's where the website kind of came as this kind of additional arm where we could, like Chris is mentioning, include stories that potentially wouldn't be a best fit for a book, but still be able to provide, additional compensation and funding opportunities because we know that these stories are worthwhile and we need to have them kind of archived and collected somewhere.
And lastly, and I feel like I've been, really stepping in to this one a bit more recently, as I think we all didn't know how long this, pandemic would be on the front end of it. But we recognize that at the Robeson House as a museum, a physical museum is probably going to be closed at least through April at this point. In terms of getting, having the right conditions in the public, and then having the right like materials and things that we need at the house to ensure the safety of visitors. So with this project being like our main way of engaging with, Robeson House fans, supporters, members, we also really want to think about how, in the midst of going through this project and the conversations that underpin it, we can turn those into programming opportunities to really look at ways we can kind of expand the conversation and turn it not into just like the closed loops of contributions, or that you end with the period at the end of the sentence, but really expand and create new forums for dialogue, new ways of engagement, and kind of think about how we continue this conversation as part of ongoing work. So we're still thinking about that. We would love to hear from you all if you have ideas around like what type of virtual programming will look like. Thank you, Tasneem, for coming, as well as Lucretia. We appreciate y'all. And I'm gonna go on to the next slide. So the first time that I made this slide, it was called goals. And I think we switched it because I really want to think about that this work is not just about the end goal of this project, but about the work and the community that we create in the process of it. So we thought about like, what do we imagine as the full life of this project, and what different types of pieces it's talking to. So I think the first one was around community, right? I think it's really important for us, and you kind of think about this maybe as like a public humanities project, that this project represents that, our own stories, our own art, our own imagination, our own ways of documenting the struggle is important and critical to our organizing, and also our joy and telling the stories of what we've been through and where we want to go in the world. It's important. Those visions are important. It helps us sustain the work, and also, sustain our souls as well. So community was deeply important. Faja, you want to take one?
Sure. So I was also thinking about this idea too of like how we use this as a political education tool, and then also a Black Studies education tool, and how we can connect Philadelphia to a larger kind of network of resistance struggle across the nation and also globally. I think one of the earlier questions that came in our process and just in our discussions were just around like, how do we position a book like this? How do we position this when there are tons of things coming out of Minneapolis, and like there are all these kind of continuums. And I think Chris and I very early on kind of locked in on, this is just one piece in that larger puzzle, right? This is something that connects directly to all of these movements that have happened. And we know that the movements, they expand in specificity, right? They expand locally, they expand within community. So how can we use this particular project as an education tool within that continuum of Black studies?
Yes, and kind of to, I will also say, I think in terms of schools, some folks might know me that I'm the curriculum coordinator for Black Lives Matter at school. It's like a national initiative around racial justice in education. And the idea that we can take the stories and really the movement ecosystem of Philadelphia, the Black-led movement ecosystem, featuring folks like the Black Philly Radical Collective, and the many different, organizations that make up the Black Philly Radical Collective, BLM Philly, the Mobilization from EMEA, MOVE, the Black and Brown Worker Cooperative, and the different types of work and spaces that they all engage in, but that our strength comes in our ties together, and that is really, sustains freedom or liberation movements. So to think about how all these things connect, whether it's the work of poets and writers and journalists, to activists, to care work and reproductive work, all those things are intertwined, and thinking about how we sustain the work of liberation. And lastly, arts and culture. I really believe that the Robeson House, um, as an institution, has always been on the front end of tying the arts and cultural work that we do to in direct relationship to present and future liberation movements. So how are we thinking of using a quote unquote museum space when you're looking at the history of something to think about the future of our world? So we really deeply cherish our relationships to Black activism across the city and really across the world. Really, we had some great presenters over the years, and I think that this project is also speaking to the responsibility, in particular of cultural institutions, Black-led cultural institutions, to think about their relationship to these movements over time. So those are some of the things that we are doing, and we feel like as when we day to day, we are accomplishing these goals in the midst of the project, and that's really what the full life of this project hopes to accomplish. So let's get a bit into the nitty gritty of what it will look like on the ground, and how we're looking to do the editorial content. So Faja, if you take one, I'll take the other one.
Also, I'll do open call submissions.
Okay.
So I think one of the really amazing, attractive things about a project like this is that there is no, at least at the current moment, any kind of overarching container outside of these are the stories from this particular year, from 2020, with the specificity of Philadelphia, kind of as that foundational core. As a writer myself, like I just thought like this would be such an attractive project to even submit to, right? Like I'm a person who exists in this community, and I want to write about my experiences from 2020. So we're doing open call submissions, and we're looking for on the ground pieces, and we also say in the house pieces because we've been in the house from various communities around the experiences during the uprisings of the summer of 2020. And that's pretty much kind of like the kind of editorial kind of focus that we're looking for. We intentionally kept it open so that we could kind of invite people to kind of meet that call as they see fit, or as they need to. Accepted submission should be strong standalone pieces and about 85% complete. Another really interesting piece of this project is we want to work in hand with contributors, with writers, with artists to kind of cultivate and curate and create a piece that works kind of standalone, but also in concert with all the other pieces that are going to be in the final piece. And we also want multimedia submissions that are okay for the website as well. So I think when we're thinking about what we're looking for from an open call standpoint, it's the sky is the limit. And we're also asking specifically that it not be previously self-published, or if it has been previously published, then we can kind of discuss what that looks like. Anything that has been published with rights, ultimately, we likely won't be able to use.
Yes, and I put that, I know I kind of edited that slide.
You did? I was like, I didn't see that one before.
I was, in particular for our website open call strategy, we do have more room in terms of like maybe we saw, and as Fasha talked about her niece, of like there's some amazing videos that might have been self-published out there already, right? But those things we can still kind of figure out a way. So we should discuss if it's previously self-published, but if it is with a particular publication, it's probably less likely that we'll be able to like really bring that into a project. And on the other side, we do have an editorial commission strategy. So Faja and I have really put together a list of key movement figures, community leaders, writers, and artists that we want to commission, that we really want to be a part of this project. So that features like members of the Philadelphia Black Radical Collective. It features thinking of like the challenges of being an elected official in this time, thinking of folks like Kendra Brooks, thinking of particular cultural writers who do an amazing job of setting context and opening up the sort of like timeline and thinking across decades and centuries, and also artists. One of the things we're excited about is we have been negotiating with Common Notions about a 16-page color glossy insert. I don't know if you remember those. I have fond memories of those in the children's books where you get the 16 pages of photos within a biography. So we're also thinking about how we can bring art into the book as well. And we're continuing adding different types of folks into we're thinking about the commissions list, and it's kind of building on it, reaching out, and it's evolving and adapting over time as well. And I think that kind of brings in that third bullet there about the commission work does not take full precedence over submitted work, and all pieces will adhere to the same editorial process. We'll be looking at them both the same and seeing, if something comes in through the open call that really stands out and shines and is an amazing, story or art for this project, we want to be able to lift that up and move that into the book project and kind of really disrupt this. We don't want it to be like a hierarchy of like the elite writers or the people who are the only ones who will make it into the book project. We really want to keep it open and think of people who are speaking to the real truths of their experience, the real truths of this moment, and asking critical questions of what's next to also be there. So it's kind of a negotiation that we're doing between the commission work and the open call work.
Yeah, I would add to that, just around like, for us, that's very much like the heart and spirit of this project, right? That we are kind of trying to dismantle these ideas of hierarchy and whose stories are valid and whose stories should be published and whose stories should take precedence. So for us, it really is about, like Chris is saying, it's relationships, but also kind of extending that arm to the community, knowing that this is a project that's led by your voices. So while it might seem like, as we've kind of been talking about, like the narrative and the genesis, that it's not fully formed, I think that's also like part of it, right? We want it to be fully formed as we start to get these pieces in, and let these pieces kind of shape what that story and what that narrative arc is going to be.
Yeah, I was saying in the chat. We're moving through these slides.
Yeah.
Just to really open up room for conversation, I want to, let folks know that we might go into about 7:15. I have been terrible at trying to figure out how long a meeting should be at this point. The internet has done the thing to me. All right. And these are kind of, important notes that we should, we kind of talked about them a little bit, right? So that we're reviewing the work, and we will be selecting for either the book publication on the project website. And then we want to have a conversation with contributors, right? To really find like this mutual share agreement around the sort of like revision of the work, so that it resonates with the larger sort of like archive, and stands in concert with everything that we have. And I think in particular when you see it at the stipend for the contributors, is we kind of expect like the book publication to take a lot more in-depth copy editing and work to get it. I mean, there might be some amazing, brilliant, already done spaces, but we budgeted more money in that honorarium for the book publication, because we want to be able to like work with those authors some more, because with a book you got to get the citations and all other stuff. It's like there's a lot of more things that go into it in terms of like the quality level of book that we're looking to put out into the world. And yeah, we talked about like we're looking for open call. We want them to be like really close to completion, like around 85% or so. We won't at this moment as the editorial team, we don't have the capacity to fully like walk pieces from the beginning to the end. So if you do like a huge sort of like a great first draft, and we can kind of talk about how we might, finesse around the edges to make it really fit. That's where it's sort of like we want to land. Yeah, the stipend. So anything that gets selected for the website, we have $100 honorarium. The book publication is about $500. We're also, and we'll talk about this at the end, about fundraising for more resources, so that we can bring on more contributors and honor and respect folks' value. So I want to come back to that, and as we think about how this project rolls out, we'll continue to lift that up. And was there anything else that we haven't said already? Oh, yeah, you can submit multiple times. Well, we're probably only going to select one from each person. So, if you want to create multiple pieces, that is fine. And we will definitely work with you to find the best outlet for that work if it's not with us. Like Apiary Magazine just put out an amazing issue of poetry, collection of poetry all throughout 2020. So there's like another magazine that you kind of submit poetry and stuff to. You have anything about the submission guidelines?
No, I think you covered it all. And we also have, all of these are more detailed and in-depth on the website. And I just added the link to the chat.
All right. Here we go. All right. So we're finally at the open Q&A. And I know we have thrown a lot at you all. And I am here, and I might have to stop share. Oh, great. That's a great first question. I'm gonna stop this screen so I can see folks and know how to facilitate or moderate better. So the first question we have is from Malkia. What's the timeline due date for submissions? So we have put on a first due date at January 31st. At the end of January, we're looking to collect. Now you can submit anytime before that. And at the end of January, we really will be taking time and bringing together a strong editorial team and some additionally editorial support to help look through everything that we have and kind of figure out and really map out the project. So January 31st is the first deadline for work. And if we are able to, expand resources for this project, bring on additional support or things like that, we might think about how we can kind of continue that. But for now, January 31st is the first timeline or due date for submissions. Any other questions out there?
I have a question. What's the word count?
Ooh, word count.
Word count and word length, yes.
Yes, I think we put some numbers on the website that you can see next to some sort of like submission types. But I'll say that we were looking at like I think it's called flash fiction. If it's less than something, how many? Okay,
it was like less than 1,000, right? Yeah.
So
I think we're looking at like
short stories, 2,000 words or so. That we borrow Walida and Marisha's idea of visionary fiction, stories of the world that we want to like live in. So those are at about 1,500 to 2,000 words. We're looking at essays like around 1,000 to 1,500 words. These could also be like interviews or op-eds or essays like around 1,000 to 1,500 words. Poetry, I would say like 1 to 2, like we can do like suites of poetry at like 2 to 3 pages, so to speak. I don't think we have space on the website to do long poems, but we won't have space in the book to kind of do very long poems. So like 1 to 3 pages.
I would say the thing about poetry too is you could submit multiple pieces.
Oh yes, you can submit like a poetry suite. Additionally, we're also looking for like chants. We want to know what were the popular chants of 2020. We also want to be able to document those. So those count as poetry. I guess they count as music too. There was some good rap, like I know particularly some like young Philly independent artists put out some rap songs about this moment as well. So like transcribe the rap songs and put those lyrics in the book. They count as well. And of course, protest speeches, which kind of count as essays, but they're speeches too. We're looking at like if you have anything that came out of a particular action that you have notes about, or if you have it written down and you want to be able to share that, if you have it recorded and you want to work with us to transcribe it, we'll probably be asking you for your support within that. We want to be able to do that too. I'm seeing this question from Miriam.
Chris, it's Corinne. Hey,
Corinne.
I had a question about photo submissions. Is there a limit on the number of photos and the resolution that the file should be submitted at, like megabytes? And the second question would be, for street photography, it's kind of hard to get photo releases for like crowd shots, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the concerns I have, because the project I've been doing is I've been specifically documenting 52nd Street, Malcolm X Park, and the various actions that have been taken there. And what emerged was a series on Black mothers that do activist work called Birthing the Resistance. So I know Sadia.
Yes.
So I think, like you guys say on there, like you have some guidelines. So like that I would maybe get permission from her, since I do have a relationship. So like, I guess I want to make sure that what I submit, like I would need to basically make sure that I could get some type of release from that person. Is that correct?
I think even more so for the book project. I think one, we're learning, and you might as a street photographer know more about like the permissions and the like the rights around like putting that type of work out.
Yeah. And I can share that with you for sure.
Yeah, so that's something we need to learn about, and we should definitely email.
Okay, so
I make sure that we're up on that. And I think in terms of how many photos you can submit, as long as you submit them as a link and not like sending them to us.
No, it'd be like a WeTransfer. It'd be like a WeTransfer.
Yeah, as long as you can like see them, you can submit.
No. Yeah,
but I feel like picking out the best ones is probably. I mean, we only got 16 pages inside the book to do for photos.
I mean, I'm
on the website, but that's up to you.
And I think that that's what's good about this project, is that there's an opportunity, even if it doesn't make the print book, that there's a digital space that multimedia projects can live, right? And these like interviews and snippets like that could really shine as like a virtual time capsule.
That just reminds me, I got like this recording of Juneteenth at Malcolm X Park.
Me too. It made it all.
It's like an audio recording. It's amazing.
Wait, and my recording, I didn't even realize it has been viewed by like 10,000 people, and it made its way all the way to Brazil. And I started getting all these friend requests from people who love Juneteenth, and I was like, why are people from Bahia contacting me? It was because it literally blew up, and people loved it because of the Black joy.
This is amazing. That means we could possibly sell books to Bahia. I like this.
Yeah.
And in terms of I think in terms of our preview, send them at a size that you feel really honors the resolution that you need to send. But we also will probably follow up to like before, if we like select them to present them out, to make sure they're at the best quality that they are. And I know in terms of the book project, I see Malav's on the call. Malav, the Common Notions, could probably think about like how to best put books, like the images in print. I don't really know too much about that yet, but I'm sure we'll find out. I don't know, Faja, if you had anything else around that.
That was going to be what I was saying, the highest resolution, that she can get over to us, that they can get over to us.
And thanks, Corinne. I've been seeing a preview of the Birthing Resistance collection.
Yes, I've been sharing it. I didn't know if you had seen some of it.
Yes.
That sounds awesome.
Thank you.
Mariam Williams. I hope people know Mariam Williams. She runs the Activist Curators Fellowship. Amazing space. I know some people in here are a part of that too. Is there an existing publication in print or online that reflects your vision for the site or the print publication? Ooh, I don't So one of the books that I've been holding at here has been it was a collection that came out of the young authors out of Chicago called The End of Chirac.
Right here.
Um,
I can't show it.
oh
because of my
yeah,
head.
because of the thing.
Yeah.
But that collection is a poetry collection. It came out of Northwestern University Press, I think 2018, and it is young people, well, not just young people, but young people who are writing about the experience of Chicago and how it's been unfairly targeted as like just a place of violence or lack. And they're writing towards like, I want you to also think about the beauty of Chicago, but also there's space for us to kind of think about the work that still needs to be done in Chicago, but from like a resistance space as well. So I think that's one publication that we have looked at. I think another one has been, there's, many different collections that are about, the different moments of uprising that have happened all throughout the world, really, like emerging from Black spaces. So you can think about like Newark, 1964. You can think about Detroit, 1967. You can think about Brixton in the 80s, in London. You could think like, so I think there's the energy in the collections and publications that have helped sort of like tell the story of those moments are also things that we have been looking at. But yeah, I don't know. What thoughts, you got any sort of like influential examples that you point to?
Sure. I pulled out a couple of them just to have like in and kind of like absorb osmosis. The Fire This Time, which is an anthology by Jesmyn Ward. And she's got some just amazing writers in here. The thing I like about it, or the thing that I kind of point to, is just the narrative arc. She kind of starts with the past, with legacy, then kind of moves into reckoning and what that looks like for Black people in America, and then she ends with Jubilee. So I really like this idea of kind of taking us through, whether it's chronologically, psychologically, how you're going to take people through the experience of the summer. So that's one book that I look to. I got The End of Chirac because Chris has spoken so highly of it, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and I think this conversation kind of gets us into the questions that we wanted to ask you all, right? So I'm gonna pull back up the slideshow for a second. So one of the things that we've been thinking about internally, but really want to invite you all for feedback, is we've been thinking like, what are potential strategies that we can have for community support? So Corinne just sent us this Black Joy archive site. We would think about how can we like build a document that where we're like building a Google Drive of the things that are inspiring us that folks might want to contribute, to allow that to inspire potential contributors or folks who might be thinking of something. So this Google Drive of current work and writings around the national and global uprisings. One of the things I have early in this slideshow is a piece from Hannah Black that is specifically about New York in the midst of like riots in New York, and what it meant to really, live this idea of freedom. We're also been thinking about like, could we do like open office hours or something, use the Zoom, where we just sort of pick a couple days and say between this time and this time, we're just going to leave the Zoom open and be there to maybe hear pitches from folks who have ideas, or orient them to be like working sessions where people can kind of write with each other. We know we have to be safe, and like we previously thought about a possibility of doing this at Making Worlds bookstore itself, but we wanted to make sure that we were safe in this period and thinking about what it would mean to have like working sessions, or how can we match, accountability partners to make sure that folks are working through and working to their submissions. Those were some of the initial ideas that we thought about, but we really want to open it up to hear from you all around like particular ideas. Like, what do you think would be best to think about how we can really support, because we are looking at like non-traditional writers or storytellers as well. So what are the strategies that we can really implement to bring more contributors to the table? Love to hear from you all on this idea.
Hey, Chris, this is Corinne. I think one of the things that I will say, I have responded to several open calls that I found on IG. and they were specifically looking to capture documentation of the uprisings, street photography. So my work is in a museum in Norfolk right now, and they were looking at connection, but across love, across examples of like mutual aid, like what we're seeing with the community fridges. How do we get the word out to those folks that are on the ground that are doing the community fridges? Like they're part of that narrative. So like I think part of it is blowing out the communication chain to the folks that are, you know, Philadelphia Student Union. Obviously we know, you know, we all have some connection there, but just making sure that people know what's going on. Like I saw it, I shared it, right? And like a friend shared it to me via a DM on Instagram. I took a whim. I said, you know what, it can't hurt. It didn't cost me anything. So sometimes with open calls, it can be cost prohibitive because open calls sometimes will ask for money. But in this case, if I understand that I have access to it, then I will feel more a part of it and more likely to submit. And I think in terms of youth voice, connecting with those organizations that have those connections, intergenerational conversations, you know, making sure that seniors know that, you know, what's going on, because we want to hear from not just one segment. We want to make sure it's completely reflective of everyone's story. So I can share like the examples of open calls that I've seen on IG that I responded to. Like I literally saw them in like other people's stories that are photographer friends of mine. I was like, oh, that's dope. Let me go ahead and submit to it. So it was like literally, huh?
Yeah, I really love that. We was thinking about an Instagram too.
Yeah, that, because I shared it, and you know, I have other friends, you know, who have connections to Philadelphia that then were like, oh, this is a dope project. You know, I have connections to digital humanities possible funding. So I think that's something I can share with you guys offline that may be of help in terms of infrastructure.
That's awesome. That's a good point.
Right.
And I think that's like one end of the, and I know you kind of mentioned this too, but like the one end that's working on Instagram. And I think one of the things that we were sort of like troubling or trying to think through ourselves is with the tool, the technologies that we have right now, it's like Zoom to be able to do these things. But we also know there's like a whole generation who might feel more tech reticent or hesitant, and thinking of like, how is it, like maybe text messages, or like how do we, like, I'm thinking, I don't want to pick on Ms. Vinoka, but like, you know, folks like Ms. Vinoka's generation who might not, you know what I mean, want to be on these Zoom calls and stuff like that, to think about how we can reach those folks and really be able to get those stories while still maintaining like safety. You can't do like door knock or anything like that.
Chris, I would say I would say a great hub is the library system. Is that the libraries need to know about this information, because the way that I connected and the way I actually know about a lot of stuff that's going on in Philly is actually through my mom, who's on this call. She usually is my connector, and it's I connect with my information through the libraries. Yeah. So even though we're in the digital space right now and people are not physically going out, you know, I think that may be a way to get it maybe, you know, more wide reaching.
Yeah. Oh, I see we got, I say, Andrea, it seems like you're one of the people that we need to email. Think about the Free Library of Philadelphia. So thanks, Corinne, making that connection. And look, we already got somebody that we can follow up with. So relationships are coming together. And I guess I'll like just pitch this last one, in particular to people who might be thinking about submitting. What are your you know, support needs, or what do you think will help you put together your best submission for this project? All right, we'll continue to think about that. We'll continue to hold that together. We want folks to be able to reach out to us. I didn't put our email out on the slide, but it's on the website where you can kind of contact us and stay in conversation with us. So in terms of next steps, we'll definitely be in communication with you all. Everyone who registered, we're looking to get out an email to you all with a quick, you know, 2-minute form that will just say, I'm thinking about submitting, or I would like to volunteer, or there's a particular relationship or people that I want you all to make sure you engage with. We'll definitely be in conversation about how to continue up on this work. So submitting to open call, the form is already open. Um, Now, I would also say that probably the first couple people who submit, we'll probably be in conversation with you quickly because we're trying to figure out our own process around how we're doing this editorial thing. So you're gonna be there and help us, figure this thing out as we work on it. Third, and thank you, Corinne, for mentioning this, like the more resources that we're able to bring together within this project allows us to really support more contributors and support the scope of the project to really expand and grow and think not just about these particular outcome platforms or outputs, but just about how this work has an importance with some or interfaces with other things that are going on in the city. We can think about I don't know, I'm getting to my dreams around like digitizing particular things and whatnot. I don't want to get too much into it. And lastly, like volunteer. We were thankful to Alexi, who reached out yesterday about wanting to volunteer to support this project. There are particular editorial, moments of there will be a lot of editorial work at one particular time that we'll be trying to bring people on and support. There's also additional opportunities for like helping us plan programming and be part of conversations and host conversations that we're looking to do with the Robeson House. So continue to volunteer, donate, share this project, recommend contributors, and submit to the open call. Yes, community, yes. We want, yes, definitely. A lot of community, a lot of different types of community organizations as well. Thanks for that, Mr. Noka. I'm going to stop the share of this screen. We are basically approaching the end. And I thank you all for staying with us, 8 minutes after 7. I definitely want to be here, be open to kind of continue conversation if anyone wants to stick on till about 7:15. If there's any outstanding questions or folks who have ideas. Malav, I see that you're here. I wonder if you would like to sort of just talk a little bit about common notions in this project, or y'all excitement for this project as well, because we're excited to work with you all.
Okay, well, Chris, thank you. I'm very happy to be on the spot saying, sharing the enthusiasm on behalf of Common Notions. So Common Notions, we come to this project with a deep, deep love for the Robeson House and a deep commitment to publishing books and working with folks in, all walks of the movement to get their stories out. We deeply believe that the best way for us to understand each other and achieve collective liberation is to start listening to each other and processing our own and other people's experiences in movement. So we bring that kind of commitment to this project, and it's no joke. I think like the ambition that the Robeson House is undertaking here to pull together a multi-genre, multi-generational, like mixtape in book form of a lot of different people's expressions, before, during, and after the uprising. And we are honored and humbled as a publishing house to accompany the Robeson House on that journey, to bring our editorial and design sensibilities to that project, and to make sure that this project reaches its best audience and does the best work it can do. So there's a lot of, I came to the call a little bit late, so I may have missed a lot of questions and discussions that perhaps we're best suited to answer around at least the technical aspects of publishing, but I'm sure there'll be a forum in the near future for us to be able to get answers out to all the folks who want it about getting into this world of publishing, which unfortunately, a lot is a little bit opaque. A lot of people don't get to have access to it, and these are essential tools for all of us. So I hope that Common Notions does have an opportunity to answer questions that folks have in the near future.
For sure. And we'll make sure, well, thanks for, honoring my on the spot call out, I guess you could say. And
Always, Chris.
always want to shout out Making Worlds Books too. They have an amazing initiative going on. We'll try to share that with folks as well. All right. I don't know, Faja, where you at? Sort of like final thoughts or words. Oh, I can't hear you. Oh, oh, no, I don't know what happened. The sound. Sorry. Oh man. It's a well. I also want to give a shout out to Niall Livingston, who's an amazing artist. We're working with Niall and have been thinking about her contributions to this project as well, which we are really excited about.
Yeah, I'm absolutely excited to work on it and to see what everyone sends in. So thank you for having me.
Yes, Niall's an amazing muralist, has things all across the city, and we're happy to, like, as the project comes together, she's going to be really helping us think about the visual language of this project and put some amazing art together.
Right.
And Faj, you want to try again?
Let's see. Can you hear me
Oh,
now?
there you go.
There
Gotcha.
we go. I was shouting. I was like, I'm excited. To piggyback on what Niall just said, I'm very excited and I'm looking forward to not only reading but also working with all the contributors and hoping to just like shape the stories in the spirit of the project, but also in the spirit of the pieces as well. So I'm just hyped.
Yes. So I want to just say thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And maybe I'll give the final word to Miss Vernoka, our executive director over at the Paul Robeson House. Miss Vernoka, who's been in Philadelphia for a very long time and seen numerous movements come together. Would you close us out for today?
Well, I want to thank Chris and Faja for this afternoon. To me, it's been exciting to hear even more about the project, and I'm excited to think of all of the people that can be involved in it. And of course, I'm looking forward to a great project that we will have that will really be a piece that will exist for time and time, because this has been very important in terms of the living history of what has gone on in West Philadelphia in particular, but also in the United States and throughout the world. So I'm looking forward to a great project. I'm looking forward to all of the people who are interested in participating and getting to know you individually and having an opportunity to really greet you and see you. And I hope this pandemic will be over shortly so that we will all be able to enjoy each other's company as we work together on this project. So everybody have a good and safe weekend. And thank you very much for your participation this evening.
Thank you all so much, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you guys so
We'll
much.
be in touch.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll be in touch, Corinne, definitely. And
Yeah, I have no. I'm sorry.
see ya. Hey, Cass. Always good.
Dolores, how are you?
Hey, Miss Dolores.
How are you? Miss Dolores is in Virginia.
Oh, nice. Thanks, Miss Dolores, for joining us. Oh, you're
Hey,
muted right now.
you're mute. You're on mute. You're still muted. Okay.
We're gonna,
Okay.
I'm gonna close it out. I'm gonna close it out.
All right.
But
Okay.
Always good. Always good. Thank y'all for coming. Oh, let me stop the recording.